Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro, Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And welcome back, everybody. This is the Judge Jeanine Tunnel for Towers show. I'm Joe Concha, in for the judge on this lovely yet cool Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. We're talking to Gregg Jarrett right now. He is a legal and political analyst for the Fox News Channel and author of Trial of the Century. You can order that now on Amazon or wherever you get books. Mr. Jarrett, how are you?
Hey, I'm well, Joe. Nice to be with you.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, you have a great podcast, and one of your episodes is about Joe Biden, and obviously the puppet president, in essence. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because I've been calling it on Fox. You have as well. We've done some segments together. This is the biggest scandal in presidential history. This makes Watergate look like, Watergate, a break-in, that went wrong. This is infinitely worse because it got people killed, right? Because Joe Biden ignored or forgot his conversations with his Joint Chiefs. We're talking 2021 during that Afghanistan withdrawal, and our national security was vulnerable for 4 years of this presidency, because now we're being told by this book by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, way after the fact, by the way, thanks guys, that Joe Biden was absolutely not available or mentally available for that 2 a.m. call. If it came in, thank God it did not. But your thoughts?
Well, you're right about Tapper. Jake the Fake, as he's known, he was a leader in this media cabal that ridiculed anybody who dared to suggest that Biden's brain was addled. And in fact, Tapper was instrumental in the cover-up over at CNN. And now, of course, driven by greed, not to mention his outsized ego, he's cashing in financially on the very subject he got so famously wrong. I mean, he's a shameless con artist who seems to think that nobody will ever remember that he played a leading role in the Biden protection racket. So where was Jake when some of us, myself included, were warning before Biden was elected that this guy's brain was mush? It was obvious back in 2020 as Biden stumbled, mumbled, and fumbled his way through the Democrat primaries. And that's why his closest aides and family members, particularly Jill Biden, exploited the pandemic to hide him out in the basement of his home. You remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And they would occasionally trot him out to do a few pre-scripted interviews with sycophant faux journalists with pre-screened questions. Even the answers, we found out later, were up on a teleprompter for old Joe to read, even though he probably had no idea what he was saying. It was so obvious to anybody paying attention. And in August of 2020, 3 months before voters went to the polls, I did my own half-hour podcast warning that Biden's mental state was so severely diminished that if elected, he would be a marionette president controlled by others pulling the strings. That was the title of my podcast, Joe Biden, the marionette president. And guess what? That's what happened.
It all came to fruition. And you, like me, were probably called from so-called media reporters a conspiracy theorist or an ageist. I had said in 2020 on Fox and on radio as well that, look, guys, I follow the media pretty closely, and you can tell when somebody's reading a teleprompter. I mean, some can do it a lot better than others, where it looks like they're just, riffing and they're going off the cuff. And then some, you could see their eyes are moving, and their tone and their inflection shows of reading, and it's not coming organically. And we saw some photos of a reflection of a screen that looked like a teleprompter when Joe Biden was doing interviews from his basement in 2020. And I said, I think he's reading a teleprompter. That's what it looks like. And of course, I was called a conspiracy theorist. I was called somebody who obviously is a Trump sycophant. Why would I make an accusation like that? Well, turns out I was right, right? And it turns out you were right. And we were all right. And you're right about Tapper. I mean, particularly him. I mean, oh boy, to come out now and lecture the media that, they didn't do this well enough. And boy, he feels some humility around his coverage and maybe he should have done a better job. No, Jake, you wanted Donald Trump defeated in 2020. You did whatever you could to defeat the man. When you had Joe Biden in front of you, you didn't press him to release his medical records, for example, or call him out on the various strange statements he would make, like in 2019 when he was at a primary debate and he said, parents, play the record player for your kids tonight. Play the record player? 36 or 45 speed. Like, what is this, the 70s? I mean, that was like totally the tell. But you could hear it at GreggJarrett.com, GreggJarrett, a lot of double letters in there, .com. So, Greg, as far as this killing at the Israeli embassy, it was so horrible earlier this week. As far as a young couple, 30 and 26 years old, the man who was shot, Jewish man, unfortunately, like he already bought the engagement ring and he was about to propose, and then her life is just taken by this madman who's yelling "Free Palestine" as he murders two Jews just outside the Capitol in Washington D.C. at the Israeli embassy. I mean, this is really. We're seeing now, it feels like the intifada now coming to basically the United States, whether it be at Columbia, whether it be at Harvard, all these protests, Jewish students scared for their lives and now even losing their lives, Greg.
Yeah, and, it's so despicable and heartbreaking. And you mentioned the intifada coming here. I was a correspondent in the Middle East during the second intifada, in which, I was there. When all of the murders and bombings and assassinations took place in Israel, I went to the West Bank. I went down to Gaza. I interviewed family members of suicide bombers, terrorists, and they were so incredibly proud of what their sons had done. I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around it, but a form of that is sort of coming to the United States. And I saw a recent survey which described an assassination culture on the far left that, roughly half of liberal Democrats think it's somehow okay and is justified to engage in violence and murder for political reasons. I mean, how can that be? And I suppose, after two assassination attempts on Trump, is anybody really surprised when liberals call Trump Hitler and a fascist, when Joe Biden states, as you point out in your recent book, that it's time to put Trump in a bullseye just days before Trump was actually shot. I mean, that kind of ugly, incendiary rhetoric can explicitly condone, if not encourage, physical violence against a political opponent. And, that's, I think, what happened here. These people, they're nutballs that slither out from under the rocks, and that's what happened in D.C. This crazed fanatic murdered these two young Israelis, and or Jewish people, and it's outside the Jewish Museum, and it's hard to make sense of it, Joe.
It really is, and you're so right. And we're talking to Gregg Jarrett, a legal and political analyst for the Fox News Channel, and the author of The Trial of the Century. Yeah, Ryan Ruth was the second assassin that I dedicated is the wrong word. I focused on for an entire chapter of my book, The Greatest Comeback Ever. And you look at the rhetoric in his social media posts, in various things they found on his computer, where he was echoing exactly what Democrats were saying about Donald Trump, which is democracy is at stake and Donald Trump must be stopped. In the case of Dan Goldman, who is a representative in New York, he said that Donald Trump needs to be eliminated. His exact words, and obviously Joe Biden, July 11th, said that Donald Trump needs to be put in a bullseye. At some point, 99% of people will be like, okay, that's just rhetorical. There's a 1% out there that will say, you know what? Yeah, I got to take matters in my own hands. This is what my leaders are telling me to do. And Ryan Ruth literally said that democracy is at stake and I have to stop Donald Trump. And what that meant was establishing a sniper's nest outside the 6th hole of Trump International and wait for the president to walk up onto that green where he would have been a sitting duck. And thank God that Secret Service agent saw that rifle being poked through the bushes when he did, or else Donald Trump is dead. I mean, there's no cover there at that point. It's just a turkey shoot. Anyway, you are right, though, as far as this couple is concerned. Washington, D.C., obviously a very liberal city, but I understand now that Pam Bondi is saying that this is eligible for the death penalty. So is that how it works, that a new administration comes in and they could lift or enact death penalty or death penalty restrictions?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be a different prosecution under, Merrick Garland, Joe Biden's Department of Justice. But, here, an assassination like this, cold-blooded, deliberate, for political and religious reasons. I mean, this qualifies as a hate crime.
Yeah.
Killing Jews because they're Jews, and you disagree with Israel's approach to the attack by Hamas terrorists on innocent civilians in Israel. I mean, so that qualifies as death penalty. But what concerns me is the point you're making, that on the left, there is this attitude that is not fringe, it is mainstream, and they amplify language that is so incendiary that it can inspire people to engage in acts of domestic terrorism, political assassinations, and so forth. Democrats seem, on a different front, to care more about shielding terrorist gang members than protecting the lives of innocent American civilians. So it's no wonder that the Democrats' poll numbers have hit new lows in nearly all of the recent polls. At some point in time, they need to wake up from their slumber and realize that their job is to help protect Americans and tamp down this kind of violence.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
And the website is thegreggjarrett.com, thegreggjarrett.com. You could hear Gregg's podcast there, read his articles, whether it be on foxnews.com or elsewhere. Just a great site, thegreggjarrett.com. And, yeah, Gregg, when we're talking about violent rhetoric, for example, we've done enough segments on Fox where, I try to be measured like you, and I don't get emotional very often, but I was on Jesse Waters' show last week, and we were talking about James Comey, how this innocent former FBI director was just taking a walk on the beach with his wife and happened upon these seashells that magically spelled out 8647, in other words, 8647. That means eliminate 47, which is the 47th president, which is Donald Trump. And then this FBI director claims that, I don't know what it meant, but he decides to take a photo of it anyway and then put it on his Instagram page just a couple days before his book is coming out. And then he gets all this publicity for it, mostly bad, mind you. But places like Stephen Colbert, Nicole Wallace, and MSNBC, they portrayed him as a victim because Donald Trump was criticizing him over this, which rightly so. But can you believe that a former FBI director would go that far to lie, about those seashells, because he obviously did that. That wasn't just somebody who did it and he just happened upon it because no one else took a picture of this thing for whatever reason. But at the same time, openly call for the removal of a president. He could say he's talking about through impeachment. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. Do you think the criminal charges should be pressed against James Comey?
Well, the legal standard is this. Did Comey intended as a true threat? Because a true threat under the law is not protected under the First Amendment political speech. And the trouble is that, Comey is the kind of guy who would lie about his intentions. because he has a long and distinguished record of deceiving people, lying to the FISA court, abusing his power on surveillance. When he was finally forced to testify before the House investigators, he said, I don't know, or I don't remember 226 times. So he plays the village idiot. And that's what he's doing here in this particular case. Gee whiz, I didn't understand what 86 a call for violence? Again, that's crazy, he said. He's crazy like a fox. He's calculating, conniving, scheming, unprincipled, unscrupulous, not to mention vainglorious. And this is the guy who did more to corrupt the FBI and demolish the rule of law than anybody. And it's going to take years for Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and others at the FBI to try to recover from the insufferable James Comey.
Indeed. And it's amazing, Greg, and unfortunately we got to go, but John Brennan is over on MSNBC, former CIA director, and he sounds like Keith Olbermann, right? Like you can't tell the difference between the two. James Clapper goes to CNN. He was the former head of DNI. Same thing. Andrew McCabe fired from the FBI for leaking to the press, and then he's on CNN having the audacity to talk about ethics. So I just find it interesting that all these former intelligence heads of major entities now are all exposing themselves to be anti-Trump, liberal, and quite frankly, unhinged. And it's unsettling to think how many other people are in government that are like that. Anyway, Greg, we got to go. I want to wish you a happy Memorial Day and play some golf, have some fun, and celebrate our great veterans. I really appreciate it.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II, one that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.